Hello and welcome to Pressure Point. My name is Carla Robinson and I'll be your host for today. Our show is called A Journey from the Past, and joining me is Namgas filmmaker Barb Cramner, and she's here to talk about her new film, Gotowas. And welcome, Barb.
Thank you.
What I wanted to ask you first is generally, how did you get into filmmaking? You're one of the upcoming native filmmakers in British Columbia. And I guess, where did you get started?
Well, back in 1983, around the early 80s, a film crew from Chicago came into our community of Alert Bay because we were just opening up our new cultural center. And we got to be good friends with one of the camera assistants from that crew. She got us interested in the fact that video could be used as a great educational tool right within our own community. So her name was Judy Hoffman, and she still works in film today. She's basically the person that got us interested. So what we did in Alert Bay is formed our own video crew, where we learned the very basics of running camera, doing sound, some editing, interviewing skills, all the basics of production right within our own community. And we videoed things like potlatches, feasts, the ceremony of our people, interviews with some of the elders and old people in our communities, different community events, important community events. And we've built a library of about 200 archival videos now since that time. And a lot of the old people actually are no longer with us since we interviewed them back in the early 80s. So it's a really valuable resource, and the videos get used by the community, the schools. You know, people use it, like with land claims going on right now. We interviewed a lot of the old people about place names and community members, and so that's basically where it started for me. And from there, it was wanting to get more technical training and actually doing my own shows. So I moved to Vancouver in, I guess it was 1986, and I took the media arts program at Cap College. And then from there, it led me to producing and directing my own shows.
So I guess with that background, you have more of a historical type of, I guess, interest in the film process, capturing the storytelling, I guess, to record history.
Yeah, that's actually a good way to describe what the work I do, because in the films that I've worked on, I make it a deliberate choice not to have a narrator, where actually the people from our communities are the storytellers, and they're the ones conveying the story to the audience. So in the last couple of films I worked on myself, it was there was no narration, and these were like the storytellers of our community, and you know, a very grassroots level of filmmaking, I would say.
Does that make it harder to tell your stories, though, sometimes, do you find?
Well, I think it's much more challenging. You know, technically, it's much more challenging to have the people speaking in their own voices, because for one thing, most people are used to being a narrator from one end of the film to the next. And my choice is that it's our own voices, so it makes the audience have to pay attention a lot closer and get more into the story that's being told, and that makes for a different kind of filmmaking. But I think people are out there and they've received my first film that was done in that way, and people really enjoyed it. And if I did films, you know, like the conventional way, then I'd be doing the same thing as everyone else. And I don't find that our stories are, you know, they're from a different community and they should be shared in that way.
What was that story, your first story?
The story was, the film was called Tlahwait Satwa, which in our Kwakwala language, where I'm from, means strength of the river. And basically it was historical fishing perspectives from three native communities, the Stalo from the Fraser River, the Helsog from Bella Bella, and the Namgis Kwakwakiwag from where I'm from in the Alert Bay, Johnson Straits area. And it basically gave, I guess, our point of view of the fishery from the earliest records of how our people fished, and how we've always fished through the years, and sometimes how our voice goes unheard. So this was a real opportunity for the communities, the grassroots level people to talk about the importance of the fish, because a lot of it is the livelihood of the community, both in a traditional way and a way that people make their livelihood. So it made some very hard points, like people from the community really spoke strongly and how they felt about it. So it's been well received, and I think it's a good film, and it's a good education, especially for a general public.
How do the people in the community react to you when you come in? Are they very guarded, or are they open?
Well, the way I like to work is I like to go out and visit the communities that I'm going to do film work in, and I go in and meet them first. I do a couple of research trips, and so that they get to know me, and that I'm there, and that they're able to trust me, and that that I develop that relationship with them first. So that's really critical to having a good interview with someone, because they trust you with their story and the story of their nation. So it works from, I guess it's from a point of respect for one another, and that's how I feel when I go in, and that they're comfortable with me being there, and that I'm comfortable conversing with them about their stories, and they're willing to share all the time. That I've never had anyone say no to me, so I feel really good about that.
Wow.
Yeah.
From that experience, how has that experience carried into, I guess, your film about the Gotowas Festival?
Yeah, it comes from the same place of, you know, being in a place of respect with people that I go and visit, because a lot of the interviews that were done for the Gotowas film were follow-up interviews this year, in fact. So,
oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's so I talked to people from the different communities, and had the same approach, and it worked great.
Okay, I guess for our audience, we just have to explain what the Gotowas Festival was. I guess you could do it.
Okay, well, the film is about Gotowas, and it's the first cultural and canoe festival in over 100 years, and it was held in the Helsug village of Bella Bella. They, in 1989, a group of Helsug traveled to Seattle for the bicentennial, and there they challenged the whole West Coast to come to their community by canoe. So it was 4 years from that invitation to the actual festival itself, where 21 ocean-going canoes from 30 First Nations paddled as far south as Washington State, all the way to the village of Bella Bella, and up north, the Haisla from Kitimat, the Haida from Haida Gwaii, all embarked on this journey to Bella Bella. And once in Bella Bella, they were given a traditional welcome, and there was like 5 days of festival, cultural sharing, health workshops, honoring First Nations women. So it was a very exciting time, and that's what's captured in the documentary that I've just worked on.
Well, you were there then.
Yeah, I was at the festival.
What impact did it have on you?
Well, I guess one of the things that really impacted me about the festival is the fact that I'm Native, and I'm very proud of what happened in Bella Bella, because I thought it was a very good starting point for like the cultural rebirth of a lot of different communities, and people talk about it. And that's why I got involved in being part of the production team to do the show, because I felt that there was, because most times you hear such negative stereotyping of our people, that this really gives a good positive image of Native people. And the fact that it's told from the Native point of view, it's the fact that the community members are speaking for themselves, makes it that much more powerful. And so for me, the impact is the fact that we can tell our own stories, and they're getting out there, and that's the main goal for me, is to educate people too.
How do you find the responsibility of being a storyteller, of being the narrator, of being the person responsible for bringing it down into the next generation?
I think it's a huge responsibility, and I always just hope that I'm doing it right, and doing the right thing for our people. And I think film and video, any media related stuff is gonna go a lot further than just staying with the story, staying in the community. Yeah. And I think it's a good vehicle. It's educational, and it's a big responsibility, but I think I'm carrying it through, and I feel confident that I can continue on doing it.
How did you get involved with the Gotowas project?
I was hired by the Helsug Tribal Council to direct and produce and basically complete the documentary, and it's taken about a year to complete, and so that's how I got involved.
So they had all this footage available to you, and I've seen some of the footage, and it's absolutely beautiful. Was it hard to, I guess, pick and choose all the, I guess, the clips that you wanted? Was there too much or too little? Or?
Well, the Knowledge Network shot, 90 hours of footage during the time of the festival and the journey. And I think the messages throughout the film were messages that came through right in the beginning when I started to look at the footage and trying to start to put the story together. And it was trying to capture the spirit of the journey and the spirit of the festival. And I was, always had that in my mind as I was looking through the footage and deciding who was going to be interviewed, who was going to be the spokesman for that community. And it kind of just all worked itself out. And it was hard because that was a lot of footage to look through. But I think the voices in the film are very strong, and they, they deliver those messages.
Yeah, some of those messages, like the environment, for example. There were several points in the movie where the environment was talked about, or not even talked about. You could just get a sense of it through the film itself, with the canoes going through the urban areas. I guess, can you tell me why you chose those shots, or when they talk about oil spills?
Right. Well, it was very interesting because the Squamish Nation crew is from North Vancouver. I seen the shots of that tiny little canoe traveling in the Vancouver harbor behind big freighters, and it didn't need anyone to say anything because it just said so much for itself. And the fact that there's a lot of First Nations that live in urban areas, and what was really interesting about the Squamish canoe is that they went back and learned as much as they could about the traditional teachings of their people. And that's one strong point in the film, is when they go into the river and they bathe in the river as a part of purifying and cleansing themselves for the journey. And they adopted one young man from Alberta who showed them how to smudge with sweetgrass, and that was another way of cleansing and purifying. And to me, it was such opposite of seeing the canoe going in the water in Vancouver Harbor and then capturing a quiet moment as they went into the river to bathe. Like there was such a contrast there, and yet powerful, powerful at the same time. And another canoe that left from Vancouver was called Spirit of the North Wind Canoe, and they represented 10 First Nations from all over BC. And the spokesman for that canoe talks about the environment and what they saw as they traveled north. And the footage of them paddling in the canoe in such a traditional manner, and then behind them is this pulp mill spewing out all the pollution. Those kinds of things don't need words to say, because it's saying it without visually saying it. So those were deliberate choices in terms of what was going to be in the film, because it couldn't just be the journey. It had to go on many levels, and I think it does that.
Yeah. Like that with the, you also had a moment in there of celebration. And when you think of the celebrations of today, of the feasts of people getting together, sometimes it's hard to tie it into the history, into the olden days, into our grandparents' time, to relate that we are connected to them as well. And you seem to be wanting to do that in your section where you have old stills.
Right.
Is that?
Yeah, that was a lahel game at the festival, and it was many ages of many different nations that were there playing the bone game, and everyone up and down the coast played that game traditionally. I came across those old photos down in Seattle in the University of Washington Special Collections, and I thought, and again, way back when I was doing research, archival research, I said this would be so neat to tie it back to the past, because a lot of the tribes played the bone game, as we call it, and now it's kind of made its own revival back to 1993 when it happened in Bella Bella. And I just thought I would say that a lot of my work ties things to the past, because it ties us to a history that we've had, and sometimes that gets forgotten. So it's again a deliberate choice of bringing us through to the past of like a foundation of where we come from, and then bringing it forward to present day. So. Yeah, so that's a real upbeat part of the film when we show the lahel game.
Did you find that tie to the past in a lot of the issues that were that came out with Gotowas, like the environment, women's issues, and because I thought that was interesting that the Women's Day festival, First Nations Women's Day, was tied into the festival itself. And I was wondering if that signified maybe the strength of First Nations women on the coast, because I don't think very many people know of the power behind First Nations women.
Right. Well, one of the ideas that came from First Nations Women's Day is the fact that women don't often get recognized for their role, and that role is like the backbone. You hear people say the women are the backbone of their communities, and it was evident at the festival because women were, they prepared all that food for 3,000 people. They were doing a lot of the hard work that was involved to make the festival a success, and it was a really nice thought, a nice gesture to do for First Nations women, and that was probably one of the most powerful and strengthening days of the festival, besides when the canoes actually arrived into Bella Bella, was when the women got together in their tribes and marched, and we're very proud to walk in their nation, and they made statements about many issues that affect our communities, and it was just like showing a bit of the highlights of Women's Day that you see in the film. Yeah.
And you were dancing there as well, and you were part of it.
Yeah.
with your own village.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was at the festival, and it was great to be part of Women's Day. I shared my work in a video workshop. They had different women from different First Nations that do different careers, and so they asked me if I'd come up and share some of the work that I'd done up to that date, and so that was neat to share my videos and stuff.
Yeah. When you were going through the footage, there was some beautiful footage, I guess, from up north. Did you hear any great stories, I guess, from the canoeists who came in the canoes from the north? Because I seen some porpoises in there.
Yeah, when they shot that footage, it was in 1993, it was the high slug canoe from Kitimat, and I thought that was absolutely magic footage, because how often are you going to get porpoises swimming beside a canoe as it's making a journey, and I felt really lucky to be able to use that footage in the show, and then have Fran Bolton from the Kitimat village talk about the environment, about survival, and I mean it's survival not only of us but of the animals that are in the sea, like the porpoises, and again, it's like taking it to many levels of actually watching something like that. So that was a very, I felt a powerful moment in the film as well.
Yeah. One of the other moments too that I found interesting was when this young woman, I think she was Nuchanos, and she was talking about learning to respect the sea.
Right.
And how as a coastal people sometimes, we forget about how powerful it is and how much it can control us.
Right.
Did you find that as well? Or?
Well, I chose her name's Anne Atleo, and she's from Ahousaht, and she was one of the paddlers for the Ahousaht canoe. And again, I was amazed when I saw that footage, because, I mean, you seen the water, how rough it was, and you seen that they traveled part way on the outside of Vancouver Island, and there wasn't many other canoes that traveled the outside waters. People try to get into the inland waters and travel up. And yeah, it's like we don't think about it every day. And I thought it's a profound statement for her to say, respect for the water, and that it could take your life, very quickly. And just the things that she said, I thought just, was perfect, ran perfectly with what imagery that was showing at the time. And it's that really rough water outside the west coast of Vancouver Island. Yeah.
One of the other powerful stories that came out of your film was the story, mother and son story, where her son was Mary McQuillan.
Yeah, that.
And she's from Nia Bay, and that her son was ill. She just said an illness. Could you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, a young man named Scott McQuillan, and this is Mary's son, went on the journey, and he was part of the International Canoe. On the journey, he had an illness in his body, and it was the HIV virus. And on the journey, he made it all the way to Bella Bella, and then he shared his story to the health workshop that was held, like the people that were at the health workshop. And one of the issues was HIV, and like he spoke in front of many people and told his story. And it was very, very hard for him because this is the first time he'd actually come out and told the Native community at large. Mm-hmm. And so for a lot of people that have seen the film so far, Scott and his mother are very profound in the film for them, because if anyone left an impact from the festival, it was Scott. And it was amazing to hear his interview when I got to view it for the first time, and to interview his mother Mary, who was so open in sharing mm-hmm. his story, because it's a difficult topic in most Native communities and any community, because people are really uneducated about HIV and what's all related to it. And Scott was an amazing young man to be so bold to stand up and say this to people, and like I say, he impacted many, many lives.
Yeah. When I heard his story, I couldn't help but cry. I mm-hmm. mean, it was just so touching. Mm-hmm. Him and his mother, you could just feel the strength from them.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Through the, when you were there, I guess and in the film, one of the things I noticed is people saying, this movie is getting beyond struggling. This is mm-hmm. strength, and it shows how the strength of the community, and mm-hmm. Against all odds, look what's happened. Is that the feeling you got?
Yeah, for sure. And that's basically what I was trying to work towards, is the fact that the communities were being empowered by what they were doing and what we were showing in the film. People who had never sang or danced or learned a song from their own nation are now doing that. It's a fact that the canoe has brought these communities together in a very different kind of way. I mean, historically, the canoes were used to travel to potlatches, and Gotowas, in a way, was like a big, huge potlatch, where a gathering of many, many nations, and this happened historically. So I think what it does, it ties us to the past, and it gives us a real sense that we do have a culture, and it's alive and well, and that the communities kind of take it forward and are using it today. There's many, many more canoes that have been built since that time, and people preparing for another journey, and it really has affected all ages in the communities, from young teenagers to elders who travel with them. So it's an empowering feeling, and I think that it's a positive one. Again, I mentioned about the negative stereotypes that always seem to be out there about Native people, mm-hmm. but this is a empowering, positive story. That's something that all the 30 nations involved and many other nations could be part of, and feel the same things that were talked about in the film.
Is the Heiltsuk Nation, or are other nations planning a similar festival or something coming up?
Yeah, actually, in Gotowas, the Quileute people from La Push, Washington, invited in 4 years to their community of La Push, and it's the continuation of Gotowas. They've called it their own name, and they're preparing for the arrival of many, many canoes to their village this summer, in fact.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did you find it to be? Some people said it was a unifying force as well. Did you find that to be with the different villages? Because along the coast, I guess, over the down in history far away, there mm-hmm. was tribal, I guess, animosities towards mm-hmm. each other, or where they didn't boundaries between each other's.
Right.
Did you find this help to get past those? Or?
I think it was a start for a lot of people. One young man from Squamish, Ian Campbell, talks about traveling into their traditional enemies' territory, and again, that's the first time that's happened in over 100 years. And they were invited into Campbell River, and they were hosted by the Campbell River people. They shared songs and dances, and where one time they were enemies. So it did. That's another thing that people don't think about that often. I mean, that's a historical point, and it's an important one, because I mean, we all didn't, everyone didn't get along that great throughout the whole coast, and you know, that's known. But I think it was a good start for, you know, when Ian said, you know, we were traveling into that territory, and it's more like to make things good again. So yeah.
So Gotowas is going to be showing soon on the Knowledge Network, but what are your plans, I guess, for the future?
Well, I guess I'll move on to the next film project, and you know, always keeping in mind that it's the stories from within the community, and I see myself as a messenger of those stories, and it comes from a place of respect and being humble about it. And so I will continue making films about our communities, and there's lots of projects waiting to be done, and I'll be continuing on.
Is it hard to sort through all the stories, I guess, that need to be told and that you want to tell them all? And
well, I know that the stories that directly affect our lives today are stories that I like to do. I mean, I know that I'm really interested in residential school, stories from that community, stories that are issue related to our communities.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where my focus is going to be in the next couple of years.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much for joining us here on Pressure Point today, and good luck with Gotowas. It looks fabulous as far as I've seen it for now, and I'm sure it'll be well received. And I wish you luck in all your projects upcoming.
Okay.
And thank you for joining us on Pressure Point. And I've been speaking to Barb Cramner, a Namgis filmmaker.